EVE Online players are up in arms over recent revelations that CCP Games, the developers behind the long-running sandbox MMO, are developing a new blockchain-driven title called EVE Frontier. The community has reacted strongly against the inclusion of cryptocurrency in the game, expressing concerns about its potential to ruin the beloved game ecosystem they've built over nearly 2 decades. Over 20 years after its release, EVE Online still makes CCP Games more than $50 million per year. Why would CCP Games risk such a stable source of revenue by venturing into the unproven and volatile world of blockchain gaming with EVE Frontiers, especially when previous crypto-based projects have consistently failed to gain traction or long-term success? CCP Games undoubtedly hopes to entice EVE Online players into trying EVE Frontier, but this presents a significant risk to the existing EVE player base. If EVE players were to migrate en masse to Frontier, it could deplete EVE Online's active community, weakening its core, player-driven economy and social structures. Given EVE's reliance on its tightly knit player base for its unique sandbox experience, a sharp drop in active players could severely damage the game's ecosystem, potentially leading to its decline. For EVE players who want to protect the game they've invested so much time in, the best course of action may be to avoid EVE Frontier altogether, ensuring that EVE Online remains strong and stable. EVE Online is a game that needs little introduction to sandbox MMO enthusiasts. Since its release in 2003, EVE has cemented itself as one of the most enduring sandbox MMOs in existence, known for its player-driven economy, massive space battles, and intricate political systems. It's often referred to both lovingly and critically as a spreadsheet simulator. Despite its niche appeal, EVE Online has developed a dedicated fanbase and proven that sandbox MMOs can indeed thrive. CCP Games has made several attempts to branch out into other projects over the years, but these have largely ended in failure. Now owned by Pearl Abyss, the South Korean developers behind Black Desert Online, CCP's future seems uncertain to many players. Rumors had been circulating for months about CCP's new project, and it was recently confirmed that EVE Frontier would be a blockchain-powered MMO. The announcement has sparked backlash, with EVE players voicing their frustration on forums and social media. Many feel this shift into the blockchain space is not only unwelcome, but entirely out of step with what the community wants. According to CCP, EVE Frontier will allow players to interact with the game world through coding and blockchain technology. The core EVE player base, already deeply invested in the original game's economy and mechanics, has shown little interest in moving to a new platform with crypto elements. One of the biggest risks to any game with real-world financial stakes, such as EVE Frontier, is the potential for exploits, dupes, and efficient currency farming methods that some players discover. In a blockchain-driven MMO, where in-game assets hold real-world value, any glitch or imbalance in game systems can have catastrophic consequences. If certain players are able to exploit bugs, or use methods to farm large amounts of in-game currency quickly, it could flood the market, devaluing the currency for all players. This not only ruins the in-game economy, but also affects the real-world value that players may have invested in. The delicate balance of a game's economy is hard to maintain, and even minor exploits can snowball into major disruptions. In EVE Online, where the economy is player-driven, these sorts of imbalances can have far-reaching consequences, and in a game like EVE Frontier, they could lead to players losing real money. This makes the prospect of a stable, sustainable blockchain game even more precarious, as the consequences of unchecked exploits could result in massive financial losses for players and destroy trust in the game's system. If exploits, dupes, or overpowered currency farming methods were discovered in EVE Frontier, CCP Games would face significant challenges in addressing them, especially with real-world money at stake. In traditional MMOs, issues like this are often handled through rollbacks, bans, or the seizure of ill-gotten assets. However, in a game with blockchain integration and real financial value tied to in-game items, these methods become much trickier to implement. Rolling back the game to a prior state could undo legitimate transactions and progress, affecting players who had no involvement in the exploit. Banning players or seizing assets could result in legal complications, especially if large sums of money are tied to the assets in question. In a worst-case scenario, players who lose significant amounts of real-world money due to these corrective measures might take legal action against CCP, adding another layer of complexity to managing the game's economy. The risk of damaging player trust is also high if CCP appears unable to effectively manage the economy economy or safeguard players' investments, it could lead to a mass exodus of players, both from EVE Frontier and potentially EVE Online as well. The company would need to tread very carefully, ensuring any actions they take to resolve these issues are fair, transparent, and don't further destabilize the game's economy or alienate its players. Despite the overwhelming opposition, some observers are curious to see how CCP handles this new venture. The company has years of experience managing a real money trading market through EVE Online's Plex system, where players can purchase game time with in-game currency. This experience could give them a better shot at making blockchain work than previous attempts in the industry. There is also the broader question of who EVE Frontier is meant to appeal to. EVE Online has an established, passionate player base, but they seem largely uninterested in blockchain gaming. At the same time, the blockchain and cryptocurrency crowd is more interested in speculation and profit than in deep, immersive gameplay. Bridging this gap between two very different audiences may prove an impossible task. One of the most significant challenges EVE Frontier faces is balancing the interests of two very different groups, crypto investors and hardcore EVE Online players. Crypto bros may be drawn to the game's blockchain elements and potential for profit, but they may quickly lose interest if their assets can be blown up or stolen by experienced EVE players. In EVE Online, destruction is a core part of the gameplay, with massive in-game wars sometimes resulting in losses worth hundreds of thousands of real-world dollars. For EVE players, this chaos is part of the appeal. They enjoy the thrill of high-stakes warfare and the opportunity to disrupt others. Unless EVE Frontier allows them to do what they love best, the seasoned EVE veterans won't play. At the same time, if they are allowed to fully participate, crypto bros are likely to abandon the game when their assets get obliterated by players who know how to exploit the system. This inherent conflict between profit-driven players and EVE's destroyer mentality could lead to an unstable and short-lived game experience for Frontier. As EVE Frontier moves into development, it's clear that CCP Games has a long way to go in convincing its player base, if that's even their goal. With blockchain gaming still a controversial and largely unsuccessful endeavor, the reason why CCP Games jumped on the crypto bandwagon half a decade too late remains a mystery. For now, EVE Online players are left hoping that this new venture doesn't mark the beginning of the end for the game they've spent years building and enjoying. But if history has taught us anything, it's that time will reveal the truth. When it comes to crypto-based projects, patience is the most reliable strategy. Every other blockchain gaming venture has fallen apart, so why should this one be any different? In the end, all it takes to prove the crypto bros wrong is to wait.